Don't go through there, mister. The boy appeared from nowhere, a thin hand closing around the cuff of Everett's coat. Please, I mean it. Everett Colson was 58 years old and had not been spoken to that way, urgent, personal, as if it genuinely mattered, in longer than he could honestly remember. He stopped. The boy was maybe 11, maybe younger, the kind of small that comes from not eating enough. He wore a gray hoodie with the hood pulled up and jeans with dried mud along the knees. His sneakers were coming apart at the soles. But his eyes were something else entirely, pale green and absolutely steady, fixed on Everett with a seriousness that had no business on a child's face. "Excuse me," Everett said. "The scaffolding." The boy nodded toward the hoarding fence that lined the construction site at the edge of False Creek. There was a gap in it, a shortcut Everett used every morning to shave 4 minutes off his walk from the parkade to the site office. "I heard the guys talking this morning, the ones in the orange vests. They said the cross brace on the corner section is cracked. They said it could come down any minute." Everett looked at the gap. He looked at the boy. He had a meeting in 11 minutes with a delegation from a Tokyo investment firm, the kind of meeting that had taken 14 months to arrange, the kind that would determine whether the False Creek waterfront project, the largest and most complex development of his career, actually happened. The numbers alone were enough to make his chest tight in the middle of the night. "Son," he said not unkindly, "I walk through there every day." "I know," the boy said. "I've seen you." The security guard near the gate was already moving toward them, with the expression of someone who wanted a problem to disappear, without having to deal with it directly. "Sir, I apologize." Everett waved him off. He looked at the boy for one more second, this child with the serious eyes and the muddy knees, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not quite guilt, something adjacent to it. Then he thought about the meeting, about the 14 months, about the numbers. He stepped around the boy and walked through the gap. He had made it about 6 meters when he heard it, a sound like a rifle shot, then a longer grinding shriek of metal, and then a crash that shook the ground under his feet and sent a wave of dust and cold air rolling past him. He turned. The corner section of scaffolding, the exact section he had just passed beneath, had come down, steel pipe and wooden planking in a collapsed heap, exactly where he would have been standing. For a moment nobody moved, even the site noise seemed to go quiet. Then the boy was there, having slipped through the gap after him, standing a few meters away with his hands in his hoodie pocket, looking at the wreckage. Not smug, not frightened, just watching, the way someone watches a thing they already knew was going to happen. "I tried to tell you," he said. Everett Colson stood in the sudden quiet with dust settling on his coat and understood, in a way that was very clear and very calm, that he had just come extremely close to dying. His assistant Bridget rescheduled the morning meeting without being asked twice. She had worked for Everett for 9 years and had come to know certain tones of voice. This was a new one, not angry, not flustered, just quiet in a way that was somehow larger than loud. The boy's name was Kit. He said it plainly when Everett knelt down to his level in the dust outside the construction site, which felt like the right thing to do, even though Everett had not knelt to talk to anyone in decades. Kit said it the way children state facts when they are not yet sure whether the adult in front of them is safe. "Kit," Everett repeated, "is there someone with you? A parent?" Something moved behind the boy's eyes. "My gran, she's at the camp." The camp. Everett knew what it was, a cluster of tents that had appeared 2 months ago at the far eastern edge of the construction zone, on a strip of city-owned land that nobody had gotten around to clearing. He had seen it from the window of his site office. He had meant to have someone deal with it. He had not gotten around to it, the same way he had not gotten around to a number of things. "Can I meet her?" he said. Kit considered him for a moment with those green eyes. "Why?" "Because you saved my life," Everett said, "and I'd like to say thank you properly." Rowena Finch was 67 years old, and she was sitting on a folding camp chair outside a blue dome tent, drinking tea from a thermos when Everett and Kit walked up. She looked at Everett with the particular expression of someone who has spent a great deal of time outdoors in all weather. Not hardened exactly, but settled, the way stone settles over years into ground. "Kit," she said, looking past Everett at the boy, "you're all right?" "I'm fine, Gran." Everett held up a paper bag, muffins and sandwiches, bought from the waterfront cafe because it was the only thing he could think of to do. I brought breakfast, if you'd like, and somewhere warmer to sit. He hesitated. I'd like to talk to you both. Rowena Finch looked at him for a long moment with the stillness of a woman who had long since stopped being impressed by men in expensive coats. All right, she said at last. Give me a minute. At the cafe, over eggs and toast and more tea, Everett learned the shape of their lives. Kit was in grade 6, or he was keeping up with school through a combination of the public library, a donated tablet with cracked glass, and a teacher named Mr. O.C. who emailed him assignments every week and pretended not to notice that Kit's listed address was a tent on city land. Rowena had been a legal secretary for 30 years at a firm in the West End until her knees went and the firm was absorbed by a larger one that had no use for her. They had been outside for 8 months. Before that, a shelter in Burnaby. Before that, a room in East Van that became unlivable after the pipes burst and the landlord did not repair them. Before that, Rowena said, wrapping her hands around her mug, we had a house. She said it simply, not bitterly. Just as fact, the way people state things that were once so fundamental, they never needed stating at all. Everett looked at her face, and the thing that had been pulling at him since he knelt in the dust outside the fence finally resolved into something with a name. Where? He asked. The word came out quieter than he intended. Rowena met his eyes. False Creek, she said, 2 blocks from your construction hoarding. The silence that followed was not comfortable. It had weight. 44 Meridian Lane, Everett said. His voice had gone somewhere else entirely. Rowena's expression didn't change. That's right. Kit looked between them, sensing something he didn't yet have the language for. 44 Meridian Lane had been a detached house on a corner lot. 3 bedrooms, cedar siding that needed painting, a garden along the south fence. Everett remembered it clearly because he had driven past it enough times, back when it sat at the edge of the land assembly he was trying to complete. It had been the last piece, the holdout. The house belonged to a woman named Rowena Finch, who had bought it with her late husband in 1989 and raised her daughter there, and who had gone into hospital with a cardiac event 15 years ago and missed 3 mortgage payments while she was recovering. The bank holding the mortgage had been struggling. The mortgage had been sold. Everett's company had purchased it, and with it the legal right to foreclose. He had known about Rowena Finch. He had known she was appealing. He had known she was in hospital. He had known, and he had let it proceed anyway, because the deal required that lot, and the deal was worth $40 million, and he had been 43 years old and absolutely certain that this was simply how the world worked. Colson Tower stood on that lot now. 42 floors of glass and steel. It had won an architectural award. Kit doesn't know the details, Rowena said still quietly. He knows we lost our home. He doesn't know why. Kit was eating his eggs. He was listening, though. Children always listen. Rowena, Everett began. He stopped. Every word that came to him felt like the wrong shape, the kind of thing you say when you don't want to say the thing you actually mean. No, she said, reading him precisely. You didn't destroy it yourself, you just didn't stop it. Kit put down his fork and looked at Everett with those steady green eyes. You built the tower where I was born, he said. Didn't you? It was not quite a question. Everett found he could not look away from the boy. Yes, he said. Kit thought about this for a long moment. Okay, he said finally and picked up his fork again. It was not forgiveness exactly. It was something stranger, an 11-year-old making room in his understanding of the world for a fact that did not fit neatly anywhere. Rowena watched her grandson, Delia, my daughter, Kit's mum. She took losing the house very hard, she said. She was 7 months pregnant when we left. Kit was born in a room at her friend's place in Burnaby. A pause. Delia had a difficult few years after that. She passed away 4 years ago. Another pause, shorter. Kit's been with me since. Everett sat with all of it. Outside the cafe window, Vancouver went about its November morning, indifferent and gray and relentless. What can I do? He said finally. Rowena looked at him steadily. That's not a question I can answer for you. That evening, Everett stood in the empty furnished apartment on the 14th floor, a unit his company held for client use. and watched Rowena make tea in the small kitchen while Kit sat at the table with his notebook open. "What are you drawing?" Everett asked. "Buildings," Kit said, not looking up, "but different ones, with gardens on the sides and windows that actually open, and enough floors that regular people can live there too, not just." He paused, seeming to consider whether to finish the sentence. "Not just people like me," Everett said. Kit glanced up. "I wasn't going to say that." "I know I was." He called Bridget at 7 the next morning. Within a week, the preliminary filing for a charitable foundation was underway, the Finch Foundation, named for Rowena, though she had not yet been told. The plan was simple in concept and complex in every practical detail. The Falls Creek waterfront development would be redesigned to include 40 units of permanently affordable housing, with priority given to residents currently experiencing homelessness in the surrounding area. The board meeting happened 3 days later. Everett had expected resistance. He had not anticipated the specific form it took. Ansel Bryce, Everett's business partner of 16 years, stood at the conference table with the expression of a man who had been waiting for exactly this moment. He was polished, Ansel, careful with language, good with rooms. He laid out the financial impact with a thoroughness that was almost impressive. The margins on the Falls Creek project were already thin. Adding 40 affordable units meant renegotiating the land use application, delaying the timeline by at minimum 8 months, and potentially triggering the clause in the Tokyo Agreement that allowed the investors to withdraw. "We're talking about jeopardizing an $85 million deal," Ansel said, because of an emotional response to a personal incident. He paused just long enough to let that land. "An incident caused," I'd point out, "by improperly maintained scaffolding on our own site." Everett looked at him. "There's a child living in a tent on our construction perimeter," he said. "Because of a decision I made 15 years ago, the least I can do is build him somewhere to live." "That's a lovely sentiment," Ansel said. "It's not a business plan." Barnaby Howe, the oldest member of the board, 74, with hearing aids he never turned up high enough, cleared his throat from his corner of the table. "What I'm hearing," he said, in the particular way of elderly men who have learned that speaking slowly ensures being taken seriously, is that the project becomes more complex. That's different from impossible. What I'd like to understand is what 40 affordable units would add to this company's relationship with this city over 20 years. Because in my experience, there's a difference between what a deal costs today and what it earns over time." Ansel looked at him with the practiced patience of a younger man, waiting for an older one to finish. The meeting ended without resolution, which meant the opposition had not yet won, which Everett knew from long experience was the most dangerous outcome of all. The difficulties came in waves. Councillor Ingrid Cross, who represented the ward containing the Falls Creek site, called a press conference to raise concerns about unauthorized residential use of commercial development zones. Language so technically specific and politically vague that it took Bridget 40 minutes on the phone with city planning just to understand what was actually being alleged. The answer, as far as anyone could determine, was nothing actionable. What Councillor Cross was doing was creating noise. A journalist ran a piece under the headline, "Coulson's Change of Heart, Principled Pivot or PR Crisis." It was professionally balanced in a way that left a distinct aftertaste of doubt. Everett read it twice and then put his phone face down on his desk. 3 weeks after Kit and Rowena moved into the furnished apartment, the city's bylaw enforcement division cleared the tent camp at the construction perimeter. It happened quickly, on a Tuesday morning. Officers, social workers, a van, and residents given 90 minutes to collect what they could carry. Rowena had not been there. She had been at the library 2 blocks away with Kit, at Mr. Osie's suggestion. When she came back, there was nothing left but flattened grass and tire tracks. 2 of the other camp residents, a woman named Bet, and an older man everyone called Arvo, who had been part of the small community that Kit had quietly looked after for months, carrying water, knowing which shelters had space on which nights, had been taken to a facility in Langley. Arvo had left behind a photograph in a tin. Kit went back to look for it and couldn't find it. That evening at dinner, Kit sat with this information quietly, not crying, just absorbing it the way children absorb things they don't have words for yet. "Bet and Arvo," he said. They're not gone, right? They're just somewhere else. They're somewhere else, Everett said. He paused. I'm going to find out where. Kit gave him the careful measuring look that meant he was deciding whether to trust something. Okay, he said. It took 2 days, 4 phone calls, and the direct intervention of Everett's lawyer to locate both of them and confirm they were safe, if not exactly well. The ease with which 2 people could simply vanish into the bureaucratic infrastructure of a large city's shelter system, become numbers in a database, shuttled between facilities, untraceable without legal help, left Everett with a feeling he did not have a clean name for, something between rage and shame, the 2 emotions that had been taking turns in him for weeks. Meanwhile, Bridget had quietly been gathering information about Ansel Bryce's recent movements. She had not been asked. She did it because she was good at her job and because she had been watching Everett for 9 years and could tell, the way longtime assistants can tell, when someone was building something worth protecting. What she found, Ansel had been in contact with the Tokyo Investment Group's secondary representative, not the primary, which would have been logged, 4 times in 3 weeks. He had also had 2 private dinners with Councillor Cross at a restaurant Everett recognized as the kind of place people choose when they don't want to be seen, but still want very good wine. Everett brought this to Barnaby Howe in Barnaby's office, which smelled of old carpet and printer ink, and was lined with photographs of buildings that no longer existed. Barnaby listened. He turned one hearing aid up. He listened again. Then he opened his desk drawer and produced a folder. The Ethics Committee met this morning, he said. I convened it myself, without telling you, because I thought you might try to be reasonable about it. He slid the folder across the desk. Ansel is suspended pending investigation. This has been coming for 3 years. Your unfortunate scaffolding incident simply gave us the circumstances to act. Everett sat in the quiet office and felt something loosen in his chest that had been tight for a very long time. Your father, Barnaby said, fitting his hands together on the desk, used to say that every building starts with the question of who it's for, not what it will look like, not what it will earn, who it's for. He looked at Everett directly. You forgot that for a while. Most of us do. The press conference was Kit's idea. He mentioned it at breakfast on a Saturday, while Rowena was washing up and Everett was reviewing the revised site plans on his laptop. He said it the way he said most things, plainly, as if he had simply noticed something that needed to be stated. People don't know about Gran, he said, about the house and what happened. If they knew, it would be harder for that counselor to keep saying what she's saying. Right? Everett looked up from his laptop. Kit shrugged. She keeps calling the project unprecedented, but it's not. Lots of buildings have affordable units. She's just making noise, and people only make noise when they think nobody's paying attention. A pause. Mr. Osei says that. Everett looked at Rowena. She had her back to them, drying a mug. I'm too old to be embarrassed, she said to the window above the sink, if it helps. The press conference happened on a Wednesday in the lobby of Everett's main building. He had expected a modest turnout. He got 12 cameras. He spoke first. Then Rowena spoke, and what she said was not dramatic. It was simply true. She described the house on Meridian Lane, the cedar siding, the garden her husband had planted along the south fence, the quality of light in the kitchen on winter mornings. She described coming home from hospital to find the foreclosure notice still warm from the printer. She described the years afterward. She used the word displacement once, and then seemed to decide it was too clinical, and said instead, we lost the place where we belonged. Councillor Cross issued a statement that afternoon, announcing that her office was satisfied. The project met all applicable zoning requirements. Nobody commented on the reversal publicly. Bridget read the statement aloud and raised one eyebrow over the paper. 2 weeks later, the Tokyo Investment Group confirmed their commitment to the redesigned project. Their written statement included a line about the importance of community-integrated development in building long-term urban partnerships. It was, Everett thought, the kind of language that gets written when the numbers still work and the optics have unexpectedly improved. He would take it. 6 months later, Vancouver had a cold, clear spring. Kit was back in school full-time, in person, at a building 3 blocks from the apartment that had quietly stopped being described as temporary. He was in grade 7, a year behind where he ought to have been, but his math teacher had written Rowena a note, saying she expected him to close the gap by June. He had started attending an after-school architecture program at the community center. A program, it turned out, that the Finch Foundation had just funded for another 2 years. Kit had looked at Everett when he found this out. Everett had looked at the middle distance. Neither of them had said anything, which felt like the right response. Rowena was taking a course at Langara College, 3 mornings a week, administrative law. She told Everett she wanted to understand the systems that had moved through her life so she could stop being moved by them without choosing it. He thought that was one of the more precise things anyone had said to him in years. The Falls Creek waterfront project broke ground in April. 40 units of affordable housing, integrated into the building itself rather than separated into a distinct wing. Kit had been clear about this in the one-site meeting Everett had brought him to, and the architect had listened in the way good architects listen when someone describes a building from the inside out rather than the outside in. The units faced the water. Every window opened. On the morning of the groundbreaking ceremony, Kit stood beside Everett in front of the hoarding fence and looked at the site, the real site now, not the shortcut, not the gap. "My teacher says you used to be different," Kit said, not accusingly, just the way he said things. "I was," Everett said. "What changed?" Everett looked at the boy, almost 12 now, wearing a jacket that actually fit him for the first time since they had met. He thought about the right answer, and then he thought about what Kit's own answer might be, and then he thought about the gap in the fence and the cracked cross brace and the specific quality of silence in the moment before the scaffolding came down. "You stopped me," Everett said, "and then you let me see what I'd been walking past." Kit considered this with his head tilted slightly, the way he did when he was working something out. "Gran says you can't really see a thing until you're ready to," he said. "I'm not sure I agree. I think sometimes someone has to show you, and then you just have to decide not to look away." Everett held that sentence close. About looking away, the particular habit of it, how it becomes automatic, how you stop noticing you're doing it, how the world quietly arranges itself to make the practice easy. About the 14 months of planning that had made a 4-minute shortcut feel necessary. About 44 Meridian Lane, and the letter he had signed without reading twice, and the cedar siding he had seen exactly once from a car window. Kit was already walking toward the groundbreaking canopy, where Rowena stood waiting with 2 cups of coffee, and the particular expression she wore when she was trying not to show that something mattered very much. "Come on," he called back, not turning around. Gran said not to be late. Everett followed the boy across the open ground of the site where they would build something new, and he did not look away.